Hi, and welcome to Studio SN. My name is Sara Naumann, and today I'm going to share a really fun technique combining embossing plates and embossing powders. Embossing plates and embossing powders combine to make a really fun textured background for handmade cards. You can see here on my card front, the cardstock has been embossed with an embossing plate, so it's raised. If you were to feel this, you could feel the bumps of those dots. Now the white is actually a resist that's been made with white embossing powder, and then the pink that you see all over here is a pink color spray. So it's a really fun and very easy technique to do, and one that gives you a lot of different options as well. So why don't we get started first with the embossing plate embossing, and I'll show you how I've done that. Now, for many of you, this is probably looking pretty familiar. This is the Label with Dots embossing plate. This is one from hot off the press. So if you've done any embossing with your embossing machine before, it probably looks a little familiar to you. You're just going to open it up and insert a piece of white cardstock. And this is just a standard white cardstock. So I like to nest it up right into the fold of the embossing plate. Press that down. And then just run this through your embossing machine. So I'm working with a Cuttlebug, so it's going to be a slightly different format, just depending on what kind of machine you have. So I'm going to start with plate A. You can see it's marked as A here. Then I'll add plate B on top. Then my embossing folder with my cardstock inside, and then plate B on top of that. And then I just go ahead and run this through my embossing machine, my Cuttlebug. And when I take out my cardstock from my embossing folder, it's going to look like this. And I know it's a little bit hard to see, but it is embossed. It is raised. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my second layer of embossing, and that's going to be my embossing powder. So for this next step, I need to have, of course, my embossing powder. And I'm working with Wow's Opaque Bright White Superfine. So it's going to be white on white, which will be a little tricky to see, but very cool when we get the color spray on there. I also need an embossing ink, and I'm using my Versamark. So you can use this or whatever you happen to have on hand. So with those two things on hand, I'm just going to bring in a piece of white scrap paper. It's been folded in half. So again, I apologize. I know it's white on white, and I'm going to add more white, which will be a little bit tricky. But I'll talk you through it, so I'm sure you'll be able to see. So working with the raised area up, so I'll be able to feel these dots on here, because this is the embossed side, and of course this would be the debossed side, the other side of this. So I'm working with the embossed side with the raised dots, and I'm going to take my embossing ink and apply the ink directly onto my cardstock. Now there are a couple of different ways that you can do this. You could simply press it on like I'm going to do, or you could use a brayer. And I choose to simply apply the ink directly on here, not squashing it down, but not just skimming on there. I want to make sure that I get enough ink on here so that I'll be able to get a nice resist area. I'm kind of avoiding the center area, but it's not going to be a big deal if I get some ink on there. So again, just pressing this on here, not squashing it, because that's going to put too much ink on there. Just pressing it on there. I'll turn this around, open it up, and take my white embossing powder, and then just sprinkle this on here all over the entire piece. Let me make sure I get this on all of those areas, and kind of tap this off here. Again, I realize it's tough for you to see, but all of the embossing ink area on here has embossing powder stuck to it now. If I find, as I'm looking at this center area, that there is more embossing powder on there than I want, just take a soft, dry paintbrush and kind of tap some of that off. And you can tap it again, and then you'll get rid of more of that embossing powder on there. So I know it's tough to see, but let me bring in another piece that has already got the embossing powder heat set on here, because of course the next step is going to be to heat set it. So as I'm wiggling this, I think you can see it almost looks like it's got frosting on there. Now for this next step, I promise you'll be able to see this a lot better. So for the next step, I'm going to bring in my color spray. The color spray that I'm working with is the Bubblegum Pink, and this is from Clearsnap. It's Stephanie Barnard's color spray line, and I really love this pink. It's a very pretty, soft, kind of vintage pink. So I need to have something to do my spraying on so that I don't get it all over. So I've got this beautiful cardboard box with some scrap paper and newspaper in here to catch some of the excess spray. And I'm just going to simply spritz the color right on here. You can add as much or as little as you want. I think you can see where that white is resisting the color spray. And then I'm just going to bring in a little bit of paper towel to blot any excess. This will of course work with any of your color sprays. So if you have dilutions, it'll work. If you have any of those other sprays, it will work as well. It just depends on the color effect that you're going for. So as you can see, all of the white on here has resisted the pink color. So let me show you something else as well, because I think this might be of interest to you too. So this is it with just the ink pad tapped on to my raised area. If I really squashed my ink pad on there, you can see with the pink spray, of course, it would be a lot more white. So even as I move this, you can see the shimmer of the embossing powder on here. So this has a lot more embossing ink, and therefore a lot more of the embossing powder has stuck to it. So this is if you squash on that embossing ink pad. If you brayer it on, you have a really light touch, this is the look that you're going to get. So something a lot more subtle, and it almost looks like it's just been sanded off slightly. So 3 very different looks. This is the way that I went for my card project. So you can decide what works for you. Then you just need to let this dry. You can see that it will dry to a slightly lighter color on there. And then you can go ahead and start using this as your card background. So let me bring in my other card here, the card original. And you can see I've just simply matted it onto white cardstock, red cardstock, more white cardstock before putting it onto the front of a red card. And I've added some Dazzle stickers here in the center. These are also from Hot Off the Press, and these are called the Inside Outside Dazzles collection. So this gold sentiment on here, it's just a sticker, just peel and stick it down there. Some paper flowers on here with some gold brads, and those have been popped up on foam tape to add a little bit more dimension to the card. Very simple and very easy technique, and of course you can get lots of other different fun effects just depending on how much of the embossing ink you decide to use. So this is how you can combine embossing plates and embossing powders for unique textured cards. I hope you enjoyed today's show. For more ideas and inspiration, please stop by my website at saranaumann.com. If you enjoyed today's video, I invite you to subscribe to Studio SN on YouTube. I'll keep you updated with a new video every Wednesday. Thank you for joining me on Studio SN, and I will see you again next time.